your oral examination, and one of the common questions that examiners do ask is, does the presence of pilot on the bridge relieve the officer of the watch of his obligation? Or alternatively, they may ask you a question that, who is in charge of the vessel during pilotage? Who is responsible for the vessels during pilotage? So we are going to see during this lecture who is responsible, who has each role. But basically, as you are aware, the pilot, is not responsible. Despite the presence of pilot on the bridge, the master is still responsible for the safe navigation of the vessel. However, the pilot have the local knowledge of the area, so his job is actually to advise. So sometimes when pilots give an order and you feel the order is not safe, the captain can override the pilot, because you are allowed to override anything for the safety of the vessel, because the captain is in charge. So before pilotage, the first thing you have to do as an officer of the watch is planning. You have to plan for pilotage. And for planning for pilotage, the first thing you do is you have to hold a meeting, a bridge team meeting, where a day before arrival port, you hold a meeting, you discuss about the pilot boarding positions, you discuss about the area and location. You also have to discuss with the officer of the watch, especially the new officers, about the maneuvering characteristics of the ships. How does she handle? What is the stopping distance of the ship? What is the turning cycle of the ship? Is very, very important. The bow to bridge visibility is very, very important. You also have to discuss about, you have to look at the weather from routine charts and anticipated weather, and look at how you are going to give the lee for pilot boarding, because you have to board with the lee. So you should be able to know the vessel have to be upright, is no rolling for pilot to safely board. You also have to consider the publications, Admiralty sailing directions. You have to Admiralty list of radio signal, where you have all the radio reporting points, what you need to do. Is very, very important. Contingency plan is very important for you to know. You have to develop a contingency plan in case. Contingency plan means that if you are piloting in case of emergency, what do you need to do? You have a contingency anchorage where you can easily anchor the vessel. Is very, very important to have a contingency plan. So these are the plan you do before pilotage, and the officer of the watch is also going to have a short passage planning for the pilotage. It's very, very important. That is from pilot station to berth. So there are things that you need to do on the ships prior to transfer operation. The first aspect is you have already planned for pilotage. The second aspect is going to be pilot transfer. So before you get to pilot station, approximately 10 miles before the pilot station, you consider calling the master. You call the master to come on the bridge. You call the bosun on deck. You call the people on deck to start preparing pilot ladder. But before that, you need to make contact with the pilot station. You need to ask the pilot station about when they are expecting the pilot. You also need to discuss about the pilot boarding arrangement. Is it going to be on the port side, starboard side? As you are aware, if your freeboard is more than 9 meters, you have to use what we call a combination ladder. That means a combination of pilot ladder and accommodation ladder. Also, if it is at night, you have to consider lightening operations. You also have to consider bringing additional crew to the bridge, for manual steering. You have to consider using 2 steering motors. You have to give engine room sufficient notice to go on standby. So you have to also make sure the master is on the bridge. It's very, very important. You have to also make sure that this pilot ladder is rigged and is reported to the bridge. You have to also make sure that you know the exact location of the pilot boarding. You have to prepare also a heavy line, or you prepare your crane to pick up the pilot luggage. So these are all the preparation you need to make. Very important, you need to also test your engines ahead and astern, test your rudders, hard over, test your navigational equipment, check also radars, everything is working fine, cleared anchors, everything is set and secured, is very, very important. Then you put the engines on standby, ensure you have adequate manpowers. So those are the preparations that you make. So we have to look at pilot ladders. There is a detailed requirement about pilot ladder. But the most common question that sometimes they might ask you is which ship should carry a pilot ladder and gangway. And those ones they hardly ask, but the most important one they ask is when the freeboard of the vessel is more than 9 meters, what do you do? So if the freeboard of the vessel is greater than 9 meters, you have to use a pilot ladder and accommodation ladder, which is known as the combination ladder. Is very important. And the pilot ladder has to be a single length. You don't have to use two pilot ladders. It's very important for you to know as a pilot when you are boarding a ship to know that the fourth lower steps must be a rubber one. So it's just for your idea now to know that whenever you are in a ship, you need to count 1, 2, 3, and the fourth one is always a rubber. So side rope sometimes should be 18 millimeters and mount rope 28 millimeter, but not all pilots require side ropes. Some will tell you they don't require side ropes. So you need to confirm with the local pilot station about the requirement. You also need to know that about the spreader. The lowest spreader is at the fifth step, and the maximum number of steps should be 8 before you have another spreader. So if you need to also check, IMO have a detailed description of pilot ladders. Since we are not discussing about pilot ladders today, possibly we can consider it in our subsequent lectures for you to know the requirement of the pilot ladder. Some of them must not be not, so you need to know all those requirements. So pilotage procedure. Now, the pilot has come to the bridge. You have already maneuvered to pick up the pilot, and to pick up the pilot, you have to ensure that you have ship, the engine is stopped. You also have to find out from the pilot what is the boarding speed. Some deep offshore pilots like mooring masters will expect to tell, because they use surfers, they will tell you that, well, your ship must be stopped. Speed is less than 1 knot, and they will give you an approximate heading because they know the location, or they say, okay, captain, give us good lee, or be on a heading of 170 to 180 with good lee, ensure the vessel is stopped, speed is less than 1 knot. While some pilots, if you are going to Bonny Channel, sometimes boarding speed is 5 knots. So you can see them making 5 knots, but the engine must be stopped for pilot boarding. Is very, very important. So you have an officer standing by at the gangway, to escort the pilot in. You have to do the ISPS check, which is very, very important. You take the pilot to the bridge. And once the pilot is on the bridge, the first thing you need to inform him is the location of the life-saving appliances. Of course, you greet him, welcome on board, this. You have to tell him before the location that, okay, the engine is stopped. Rudder is on midship, we are on approximate heading, the speed is this. And then once you tell him those things, because just to appraise himself, then when he's comfortable, you tell him the location of life-saving appliances provided for his use. Thereafter, you discuss the master pilot exchange, and this discussion have to include pilot cards, maneuvering characteristics of the ship, the wheelhouse posters. If you have any of your navigation equipment not functioning properly or is defective, you have to inform the pilot. You also have to, the pilot will now in return discuss about the proposed passage plan. He will tell you the different radio reporting points, which you might already have because you have gone through the publication. He will give you the betting plan, and how the betting operation is going to take place, how many ropes, what do you expect. He is quite familiar with the area, so he's going to tell you the expected traffic. And if there's going to be a pilot changeover, he's going to tell you the requirement when the next pilot will be boarding. Is very, very important. So the master now will clarify the responsibilities with bridge chief for pilotage, and everybody should know his roles and responsibilities. We also need to clarify the official language to be used. Been to Indonesia, and if you see a Malaysian ship coming with Indonesian pilots, mostly they give him orders in their language because their working language on those ships is Malay. So it's very important for you to agree on official language because communication is a key. You need also the officer of the watch need to monitor the progress of the ship, need to monitor the speeds. There are speed limit during pilotage. You should not exceed 10 knots. So when you are where he will tell you to slow down. So you also need to monitor execution of orders being, so meaning that if the pilot say hard to starboard, you need to check the helmsman is not going 20 degrees to port. So it's very important. He has to repeat and you have to see. So engine room and deck crew should be briefed properly. You need to give their crew appropriate notices. 10 minutes, 5 minutes notice is very, very important. Correct flags need to be displayed. Very important. You have pilot on board, flag hotel, national flag, quarantine flag because free practice has not been granted. It's very, very important, for you to know those. So now, what are the duties of a pilot? As I've said earlier, he provides expert advice and guidance to the master and the bridge team when navigating in pilotage waters. He keeps the bridge team appraised of pilotage progress and any anticipated need to deviate from the pilotage plan because he has local knowledge. He advises the bridge team of any failures, such as deficiencies, such as unavailability of talks in good time. If there's a failure of talks, or let's say one of the boys is not late, he advises the bridge teams in good time. If the talk is going to delay or they have any problem, he's going to advise you. He has a local knowledge of the particular port. He is going to also inform the bridge team of any handover plans between our pilots, which is very important. So now, what are the duties of master and officer of the watch during pilotage? So during pilotage, as I've said earlier, the presence of pilot on the bridge does not relieve the OOW and master of their responsibility, which is very, very important. You have to let the examiner know if he asks you, yes, the pilot is on board, but I'm still responsible for the safe navigation and safety of the vessel. So the master still remains responsible for safe navigation of the vessel. And you have to ensure that appropriate charts are available. In this case, where charts are your primary means of navigation. If ECDIS is your primary means of navigation, you have to ensure that ECDIS terminal is properly set up for pilotage. You have to check bridge is appropriately manned to maintain a proper lookout. What I mean here is the helmsman should not be the lookout man. If you go to safe navigation guidelines, so the helmsman, his duty is helms, while you have the lookout man different. So it's very, very important. And lookout is good because even rules of the road says rule 5, every vessel shall alter maintain a proper lookout, which is also a core requirement of navigation. Whether you are piloted at sea or you are approaching port or you are at anchor, you must keep a proper lookout at all time. So you need to also monitor the progress of ship and navigational safety. You need to check that you are not off track. If you are off track, you inform the master and the pilot to try and bring the vessel on track. You need to monitor distance to the next waypoint. You need to monitor what is the next course. You need to monitor the speeds. You also need to monitor distance to go. You need to monitor which set of buoys you are passing and which set of buoys you are anticipating to pass. Very important, you need to monitor the depth of the vessel, the under-keel clearance, taking into account of squats. So it's very, very important. You need to monitor the ground speed. You need to also monitor the incoming traffic. Also, you also need to monitor any sort of obstruction in the channels. So it's very important. So you also need to carry out orders and instruction given out by masters and pilots, but you also need to seek clarification if you are unsure of that order or is not clear, or you feel is going to jeopardize the safety of the vessel. Is very, very important. You also need to pay attention to communication between pilots, shore, tugs, and mooring boats. So especially if you are going to a port that English is not their first language, you need to be very, very careful on that. So with this, we have come to the end of the duties of officer of the watch. What you need to do during pilotage, what preparation that you need to make. Sometimes they might ask you a question about what are the contents of your pilot cards. So it's very, very important. What are the publications that you will consult? Prior to pilotage, you need to know Admiralty sailing direction, Admiralty list of lights, Admiralty rate of radio signals is very, very important. Routine charts, guidance to ocean passages of the world. So you have to be very, very careful, in answering this question. So with this, we have come to the end of our lectures. If you have any question, now the floor is open. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Captain Caleb. Thanks a lot. This was a lot in one. But before I say what I want to say, does anybody have any question? If there's no question, there will be question for the class.
Okay, I have a question, sir.
Go ahead.
Okay, please, I want to ask that if the pilots around the world, do they have like a body, a governing body, which you can report them to? Like the case of this case that happened in Egypt. Some people were saying it's the fault of the pilot, and so is there any body, any international body that you can report any pilot to?
Yes. There is, when incident like this happen, when you have a route pilot on board, the first thing you do is to report him to the port authority. They have a chief pilot. In case he's a mooring master, deep offshore pilot, you report him to senior mooring master, who is a chief pilot there. And also, if you check, there's an annual statistic where they publish under International Association of Maritime Pilots. So there are different associations. International Association of Ports and Harbors, we also have a pilot section. Then locally, you will see there is Association of Pilots in the UK, Wales Pilots, Solent Pilots. So there are different associations, but the global body is the International Association of Maritime Pilots. But you have to understand is that associations, most of these associations, they are like a non-governmental organizations that are being formed. There are no regulatory bodies. So they cannot regulate, they can just provide advice. They are not like regulatory bodies, are bodies like IMO, they are regulatory bodies, MCA, but bodies like Nautical Institutes, they can only endorse something, but they cannot make rules, they cannot make regulation. But per se, you can be able to report such situation to the local pilots.
Okay.
Yeah, so even as an officer, the first person you should inform is your past, your master, and then you take it off as well. Anita, go ahead. Anita, are you there? Okay, Prince.
Okay, yeah, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, fine. My question is this. I notice sometimes on our vessel, I'm working on anchor handling tug. Sometimes when we are mooring or towing an export tanker, you discover that the tension will be as the OW or the handsman or whatever that is handling the vessel, the tension on the line will be okay for you to steady the vessel, the export tanker. But the mooring master or on board the export tanker will be telling you it's either you reduce the percentage or increase the percentage. But knowing fully well that if you go by his word, it's not going to be safe for you. And at that point, what do you do?
Okay, thank you very much. Fortunately, I'm a mooring master as well. So if I understand your question, you are talking about a static tow or when you are
Yes.
tethering coming alongside. Because
That is correct.
we go with a tugboat while going alongside, you make fast a tug about 1 nautical or 1.5 nautical mile downstream of the SBM before proceeding. So if you make fast a tug 1.5 nautical mile downstream, you know, in SBM, you approach the SBM,
Yeah.
you know, against the current.
Yes.
So as you are going, you know, when you make fast, depend on the mooring master, some will say, okay, you go on 30%, you know, or you give me 25%, you give me, but we know the capacity of the bollard pool. So
Yes.
the requirement, sometimes you don't exceed 70% of the bollard pool so that the tugboat can also have some sort of power to keep himself in case of any other emergency or bad weather. So if you are alongside, that is approaching now. But if you are alongside now and then, you know, maybe you have squalls during static tow.
Yeah.
Normally, if I ask them to increase gradually, if they're on 30%, you go to 35, you go to 40, depends on the size of the tug. If you have a 60-ton, 60-ton capacity tugboat, it won't really help you. Unlike something like 71 tugs, big tugs, you know, so it won't really help you on that. So what you need to do as a mooring master, you prepare the engines. Very, very important to that. Prepare the engine, tell the tugboat, make sure you keep your lines all the time out of water. And then as I'm swinging along, swing with me, and then give her a kick astern. And you have to monitor when you are moving astern, you don't go with too much speed, otherwise you are going to break out. You know, you give her a kick astern. Just the issue is you need to make sure that the SBM does not go up to 9 o'clock or 3 o'clock position. Those are the reasons why you have to do the static tow, you know, because if it goes to 9 o'clock and you drift, you are going to hit out 3 o'clock. Those are very, very dangerous positions. So if at that point, sometimes the company that you are towing should have maybe a sort of guidelines to say, okay, this is the maximum amount the tug can do. And the tug master should be able to speak out to the pilot to say, hey, I think I can't be able to pull beyond this. I'll just require some power to keep myself. So I hope your question has been answered.
That is correct. Thank you.
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah.
I could chip in a little bit on that as well, Captain Caleb. Because, well, I did a lot of anchor handlings and static tows, deep sea, as you know, for quite a while. I want to correct an impression that from the guy that asked the question, that the towing, what you see from the boat is really not the full picture. The mooring master has a clearer picture of the situation than from the boat. The also, you know, the distance to the tension between the also line that is from the maybe FPS or the buoy load to the tanker itself. What is the tension on that? You know, so there's a lot of things in the picture that is not you might not see from your own boat. So where the mooring master is telling you on what he wants or what he thinks is best, it's better to discuss this thing and lay your complaints rather than assume that you think what you're giving him is good enough for him as well. So if you have safety concerns, raise it up and say, oh, okay, I can do this, or yes, but this is going to happen. So you can have this conversation. If you approach the discussion with the mindset that you have an answer already, or you know what is best, it will be giving us some conflict. I hope that is that's helpful as well.
Wow, that's correct. That's good too. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hello.
Yes, JJ, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Please, I quickly want to ask this question. You know, we discussed about heavy weather and we're talking about pilotage. And thank God we have a mooring master as our lecturer tonight. That's the Captain Danladi. Please, I want to ask, when it comes to like for our own territorial water, Nigerian water, we talk about mooring operation of the export tankers. At what height of, do we specifically have the height of wave, the swell height, or the speed, a particular speed of wind that can be determined unsafe for a mooring operation to take place, or we just determine it by ourselves?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Yes, there are limits for mooring operations to take place. Even when you have already moored the vessel to SBM, there are still limits. For instance, if you are approaching a berth, you know, if the wind is more than 30 knots to 35 knots, you abort the approach. If the wave height is more than 2.5 meters, you abort. You know, same that if you are approaching soliton coming, you know, soliton, the rib tides that move around, you abort. If the visibility is less than 1 nautical mile, you abort. You also know that very, very important as the mooring master, if you feel that it is not safe for you to moor the vessel, you use your own discretion to abort the operations. Now, when you are already alongside and then cargo operation is on the way, and the wind speed is up to 35 knots, the first thing to do is to stop loading immediately. Stop loading, you know, and then when it is 40 knots, they advise you to cast off. But you know, you guys have been in West Africa, these calls, they don't stay for long. They pass within the period of 10, 15 minutes. But if it is something that is going to stay long, those are the limits. You know, you have limit for even ISGO, the ship shore safety checklist, also gives those limits. So we have our limit in our safety manual. We have our limit, you know, in our standard operation procedure. You know, we have the limit for waves. You know, we have the limit for swell. We have the limit for wind. We have the limit for visibility. So same, I believe, is applicable to the normal sea pilots. Those are the MPA pilots, which I've not been as, I don't know much about MPA pilots, but I believe there's a weather criteria, because when I was sailing, we do go to ports. You know, if you are going to ports like Sines, sometimes they will tell you that the port is close to traffic because the waves height is 5 meters or the wind is heavy. So definitely there is a threshold, you know, for mooring operations, for cargo operations, and also for unberthing of the tanker. I hope this answers your question.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Anita, are you still there? You can unmute yourself and speak. Your hand is raised. Okay, Captain Afo, just permit me to quickly say this, and Captain Caleb. So I want to mention this. In recent times, during inspections and all that, because we talked about the pilot ladder or these ladders, embarkation ladders and all that, I will please suggest the officers responsible for LSA, once in a while, open this ladder, stretch it out, let it get fresh air. Don't just cover it with canvas and think all is well, because the day you need it, it might have failed you. Recently I see this ladder is already rotting, broken, and is well packaged, but it's damaged. So please, guys, take a note of this. Real life, you might your life might depend on it. The second thing I want to say is about why it's important to secure your anchor for every weather. Of course, we know about the lowering and evening of the anchor. But what a lot of us might not have had the experience of is if your anchor just pays out at a depth of water that is probably maybe more than the Hello, are we still there? Or I think my network went off. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
we
you're
can hear
clear.
you.
Okay, so yes, I was saying about lowering your anchor at the, so every anchor design has, if you look at the manual for anchor design, try and find it. You will see the depth of water designed for your windlass. If you pay out your anchor in water depth deeper than that, I'm sorry to tell you that you might not be able to retrieve that anchor. Yes, so if all your anchors and the chains, for example, maybe you pay out 9 or 10 shackles on a vessel, maybe all our HPS, I don't know, I'm trying to think about maybe all these 3,000 gross, and you pay it out at a water depth of about 200 meters, you might not be able to pay it out because your windlass might have a capacity of maybe 10 tons or maybe 15, but the depth of without water, it will be a lot of work to do it. So in that case, you will struggle. So that's one of the reasons why you need to secure this anchor. I don't know how to explain it. I've had that terrible experience myself before. Maybe Captain Afolabi, you have to remove this from the recording. So yes, don't do it. So it's better you secure your anchor very well. You will not be able to retrieve your anchor. Thanks.
Please, can you summarize what you said again, please?
You have to pay for the summary. Okay, so let me Captain Afo, can you pause the recording so I can give
that. So it's very, very important for them to look. But I've sent the MGN to the group, and they can also check the bulk carrier guides. Then for experience purpose, they can go to Nautical Institute website under Marine and Accident Reporting. They will find some useful reports about heavy weather incidents that have happened in the past. So it's very important to learn from the incident so that you can prevent future occurrence. So it's very important. They can also check about the MSC circular about heavy weathers in IMO website. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. We've seen, I just checked the group chat now. I saw the, the MGM. I think it's going to be a good read as well. Especially for those who don't want to fix Captain Jackson's anger. Or With that, thanks everyone. Well, is there any other still questions to ask or to add? Yeah, I think we've even shoot our time. Well, thanks, Captain Caleb. Thanks. This tonight was really wonderful. A lot. I will have, when Captain Caleb was talking about reducing free surface effects, I think we will kickstart from there next week. So someone is going to tell me, how do we reduce the free surface effects on a vessel, how to effectively reduce the free surface effect on a vessel? That stability, but it's really quite important as well. So guys, please get ready. With that, I will say thanks. Thank you again, Captain Caleb. Thanks to Captain Tayo, Captain Anson. I saw Banks somewhere, JJ, Beatrice, Temitope, Anita. Thanks everyone. Umar, thank you very much for your contribution. And see you next week Tuesday as well.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.